There is a stunning new poll from YouGov, which finds that 66% of of Republicans in the southern United States want to secede from the United States and become their own country. This was a joint poll between YouGov and Brightline Watch, and they did some interesting things. One of the things that the poll does is it breaks down the country by regions. So you've got like the Pacific region, which is California, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, and Alaska. You've got all these, the Northeast, etc. And what they did was they reported people's interest in separating out as a country, not at the state level, but as a region. If your region could become its own country, would you want to secede from the United States? And they asked people this on the basis of party affiliation. So let's look at some examples here. In the Northeast region, as an example, which includes Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, a couple of Maryland, Delaware. They said, okay, would you want to be your own country and secede from the United States? And for example, 39% of Democrats said, yes, we do. We would like to be our own region. 35% of independents and only 26% of Republicans said, I would like the Northeast to be our own region. The largest level of support in this poll across all regions and political identifications is Southern Republicans. If you look at the Southern region, that includes Texas, Florida, and a bunch of other states, 66% of Republicans said, yeah, I want to secede. I would like our region, the Southern region, to be its own country. Now, the absolute most ironic thing about this is that the Southern region would be completely unsustainable economically. Some of the states that are the biggest takers rather than givers when it comes to federal money would be in that Southern region. So said a different way, some of the states that are the most dependent on money that comes from other states through the federal government are Mississippi, Kentucky, South Carolina, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. They're all in what would be this southern region of the United States. Texas and Florida are kind of in the middle. They're not terrible. They're not great in terms of paying in versus getting out. So the point here is the group that most wants to secede from the United States, Southern Republicans, and make their own country out of their region are the ones whose states are the least economically able to do that and the most dependent on blue states to subsidize them. This isn't new. We've covered this. We've done stories about this before, about this contrast before. It's been true for a very long time. Now, consider the reality versus perception. Their perception is things are really bad being part of the United States. Why? Because of Democrats and liberals and progressives like Joe Biden's communism and his socialism and the Marxist Democrats. Woke culture is ruining us. Cancel culture is ruining us. Men in girls' sports, as they love to say, it's ruining the country. And we'd be better off if we separated and did our own thing. That's the perception that many of them have. The reality is none of that stuff is actually going on. There are almost no socialists in the Democratic Party. And however bad things are in your state in terms of education, and they're very bad in a lot of these states, however bad things are in your state in terms of access to healthcare infrastructure, it would be even worse if you lost the subsidies you get from blue states through the federal government. Blue states that are paying in much more than they get out and making your education system be slightly less terrible. Making your healthcare system be slightly less terrible, making your infrastructure slightly less terrible. It couldn't possibly be more backwards. And they have the idea, these Southern Republicans, if we separated and did our own thing, we would be much better off. But again, in a sense, just like I don't take joy in the anti-vaccine nurse that just died of COVID, because I see her as a victim of disinformation, it's very similar for lots of these people who wrongly blame their problems on imaginary issues rather than the real failures of their almost exclusively Republican state and local level elected officials. They are also the victims of disinformation. They are persistently victims, by the way, also of a terrible education system in their states. They can't even follow simple logic like, oh, pandemic, okay, mask for now, and then vaccine once we can get it. They can't even follow that. So they are also victims to some degree. Now, we'll have a voicemail about this with a different perspective a little bit later on. Last thing on this. it shouldn't come as a shock that the group that most glorifies the side of the Confederacy during the Civil War is the one that most wants to secede from the Union. That's actually consistent. That's not surprising. And so it shouldn't come as a shock to us. We're going to have more coverage of this poll on our Instagram, so make sure you're following us there at David Pakman Show. We'll take a quick break, and we will get to the decidedly, overtly anti-vax shift among many prominent Republicans that took place over this past weekend.